First, I wanted you to tell us about your experience with COVID-19.
My name is Alexander Kemp. I am a bus operator in New York City Transit and a COVID-19 survivor. It was a traumatic experience working at the Transit Authority and being exposed to a higher concentration of COVID, almost ground zero for COVID when you consider that over 140 people have died from New York City Transit alone, more than any other agency in any part of the country. More deaths in New York City Transit than some countries actually had. So, yeah, 100% had contracted COVID at work. Driving my bus, almost kind of knew when I caught it because of after they had closed the schools, they still left the access to the bus operators, to the train operators, and to the conductors, still very personal up until I think the third week of March, when from the first week of March, we had been asking for PPEs when they closed the schools and we were denied because we were told that it wasn't part of our uniform. We weren't able to use masks and we were told that if we used masks, we would get violations and be taken out of service because it wasn't part of our uniform. And they didn't want to scare the general public.
So how about home life? How did it affect your family?
Sure. So from the day that I actually ultimately became sick to the point where I was incapacitated, where I couldn't leave, where I was quarantined and isolated to the basement, it was probably the most traumatic experience of my life. Hearing my kids, knowing my children were upstairs, I was unable to walk for 3 days. I had a fever of 103 for 9 days. I wasn't able to eat for 11 days. I had lost 28 pounds. And there were nights I just laid in the bed and cried in total pain and in fear of giving my children what I was actually feeling, or my wife. You know, just knowing that I was in a house 200 feet away from my children and my wife, and that the real reality of life and death lingered on whether or not they contracted what I actually had. That was a very traumatic experience, very painful experience.
Thankfully, they didn't contract it, right?
They did not, and I actually wouldn't go around them until I had gotten 2 negative tests and an antibody test. I stayed away from them probably for about a month and a half. I had contracted it or gotten incapacitated March 23rd. I did not go around the kids again until the second week of April, almost into May, until I actually knew that. I had gotten my first negative test on April 3rd, then I got another test on April 9th, but I still had a lot of complications because I was diabetic. So it took my sugar through the roof, and my body was choosing whether it was going to fight the COVID or fight the sugar. So my sugar went up to 400, my diabetes spiraled out of control. They put me on enormous amounts of diabetes medication. After I had gotten tested negative for the COVID, then I had gotten an infection in my chest and had to go on another course of antibiotics for 10 days.
Wow, so it took a toll on your body. I'm glad that you're well now.
I appreciate it. Yeah, no. And I still don't feel like I'm still waiting for that aha moment when I feel like I did prior. And I feel compromised every day. I just feel like, and now I'm back to work. So this is my first full week back to work that just ended. Terrifying. It's first and foremost because there is no data supporting whether or not you can actually catch it again.
Right.
2, still being ground zero, still being exposed to people who have been quarantined and never contracted it. A large amount of the population still don't have positive tests. Many people have tested negative and don't have antibodies, which means that there's a whole bunch of people who are still going to get sick. And every day in the bus, you are exposed again to that environment.
So spiritually, has this experience changed you?
Oh man, yeah. There was conversations with God, and I had to turn my phone off because people were calling me and giving me their well wishes, but it was almost like saying their last goodbyes, right? Like, because you would go to sleep and you'd wake up in the morning, you hear 3 people from your depot died, or somebody's cousin, or somebody's aunt, or somebody's mother. And the way it paralleled to your reality was that any given moment, could this fever turn into me being rushed in an ambulance and never seeing my kids, my wife, my family again? So I had to make a real peace with God and basically just make an atonement that in the event that tomorrow didn't come, was I ultimately satisfied with where I had or what I had done with my life up until that point in regards to my heart, like how I related to people. And dealing with that, coming out of it and getting past it, it made me more human, right? I mean, the things you might walk past or just brush off as everyday realities, you almost take a stop for a second and soak them all in and be more reflective with the environment, with people, with compassion. I'm just a lot more in tune with it.